This is Paranormal Encounters, and my name is Brenda McGee, the host. I want to introduce my guests today, Steve McLaughlin, Father Bob Bailey, and Rob Jacobs. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so what I'm going to start with is I want you to, if you could tell me a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll go from there. Steve?
Steve McLaughlin, Brenda's Paranormal Team. We do a deliverance ministry and blessings as well as investigations.
Father Bob?
And I'm a full-time pastor at a parish in Rhode Island. And I also am a diocesan spiritual director of the World Apostle of Fatima, which promotes the message of Our Lady of Fatima. And I have a healing and liberation mass once a month.
Nice.
Busy. Very busier than me. And I'm Rob, and I'm assistant to Father Bailey in the PWSM ministry. And other than that, I study a lot of the prayers and background on the demons and stuff. And pretty much just a father that stays at home right now.
Right.
That's my job.
Now, are you both on the same team, or you?
Yes. We're actually co-founders of PWSM, which now, because we're exclusively dealing with the demonic and spiritual battle, it used to be the Paranormal Warriors of St. Michael, but now it's the Presidium Warriors, which is more, like a Roman Presidium, an army. Mm. So that's the difference. And so we both founded it on the premise to educate on the spiritual battle, as well as, demons, and help people to empower themselves to do spiritual battle.
That's amazing. And thank you for the work that you do. Can you tell me how it all began for you?
Yes. Ever since I was young, I always had an interest of good versus evil in the movies. I was a big Dracula fan because it was always, they used the cross and all that. I just always had a sense of, of that. And I knew since I was young that at some point I wanted to be a priest, but more than that, but also to fight evil. I was blessed with a priest in the family who taught me everything I knew, and he was very solid and orthodox, and I learned about miracles and apparitions and the devil and all that. And so when I was growing up, I had that. I always had interest in ghosts. I loved Halloween, but that kind of went dormant because none of my friends were involved in that. So it wasn't until I was a pastor in my former parish, someone said, "Oh, you got to watch this paranormal show." And that was the Ghost Hunters, when they would go and doing individual houses and stuff. Well, I got glued to that, and because of that, I got back that interest, in the paranormal. And then I met a paranormal team through a mutual friend who had a show. And I would go hang out with them, sitting in the audience, and we could talk paranormal. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
But then as I went further, it's like, okay, I'm a priest. I have something to offer that at the time paranormal groups were not versed in, and that's doing spiritual battle. And that's when I went to my bishop, and I said, Bishop, I would like to work with the paranormal groups, but I think the church has something to say, and they want to hear us. They want us involved. And, he gave me his blessing. He said, "You're not to do exorcism at this point." I said, "That's fine with me."
Yeah.
And they're rare anyways.
Right.
But I, deliverance and house cleansings and stuff like that. And it was actually through meeting, through a friendship, which was an unlikely friendship with Ryan Buell, that he invited me to meet him on a local case, and then I ended up helping out. And then we gelled, and then that's how I started working with him on Paranormal State, and that really opened my, world to the deliverance ministry. And I felt this is something that was meant to be for me, for my ministry to focus on.
Now, I have to tell you this because I know it's going to sound quirky or whatever, but I loved you on Paranormal State, and it was funny because when you said yes to the show, I was like, ah! And even Steve was like, oh, I want to be on the show. But it's funny that, Rob, that I met you, and then it just connected. So it's funny how things happen, but, you know,
Small world.
It really, really is. And I always say it's divine intervention. There's a reason why we were brought together, why we're here, and we're both spreading, you know, we're all spreading the same thing, is how you can be helped. Now, how about yours? What was your first experience?
Oh, mine probably goes back to my childhood, probably 7 or 8 years old, you know, a house with my family, and there were strange things that would happen. And as scary as it was very interesting, and, you know, I dealt with that for years as a kid, being terrified. And then as I got older, I started taking some psychology courses, and it always kind of led to the paranormal. And parapsychology wasn't big back then, but it was like something that was very interesting. And I kind of stuck with that through my late, like senior in high school and, you know, beyond for a year or so. And then I kind of dropped it completely until, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. It was a friend of mine, Lou, came to me, and I think it was probably because of the ghost hunters. You know, all of a sudden, boom, you know, it's out there. Let's form a paranormal group. And I'm like, all right. You know, I mean, it was interesting, but I wasn't, you know, all that interested in it at the time. Like, there was always a thing with the ghosts. Yeah, that's interesting, but long story short, we did. We formed the Taunton Paranormal Group, and we did a few cases, and we were very green, very ignorant. You know, we didn't know a lot. You know, we thought we did, but we never even thought about, you know, the evil cases, the demonic stuff.
Right.
And then we started a show just like this, a cable access show called Haunted Happenings. And the second show we did, Lou had seen Father Bob on Paranormal State. Somehow he got his number. And he called him and made him think we were completely nuts and asked him to come on the show. And he said yes, but he made sure to bring somebody with him in case we were nuts.
It's always good to come in a pair.
That's how we met, and we kind of clicked.
Yeah, right away.
Yeah, and we actually did an investigation at your rectory because there was something going on, surprisingly, in his rectory. And, you know, we did a lot of cases of, you know, a paranormal nature, and then we started learning a lot more about the demonic. I mean, being in the paranormal and you know, doing the group, it was so important to actually get an understanding of the other side of it, the darker side.
Right.
And, you know, in the years I've known Father Bob, I've learned a lot. And there was at one point, I'd say it was a couple years after forming the paranormal group, that I made the decision that I was supposed to be doing the spiritual side, the liberation, and we talked, and that's history, I guess. That's where we're at now.
I think it's safe to probably assume that what started to spark that was the investigation in the rectory.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When we called you in frantically because we knew there was something going on there.
Yeah.
So
We
that
actually
began his journey into the spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
Morphed, you know, from changing from the ghost hunter
hunting
to now spiritual warrior.
We actually got some phenomenal footage in his place that night. It was something I couldn't believe. It was. We actually caught. There was one room that everything was going on in, and we had 2 cameras, I think, set up in there, and there was a pile of boxes in the middle of the room, and we had a shadow actually come up, kind of hunch down, and go behind the boxes and out the other side on film. And we tried to replicate it, and we couldn't do it. But
Nobody
I mean,
was in that part of the rectory at all.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Especially that it went behind the boxes and continued on from the other side. It was pretty wild.
You know, it's funny because I've learned a lot from Steve, you know, knowing all of these things, and even I have questions. And you know, who would think that a rectory would be haunted? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Steve, is there anything that you want to talk about, or?
Yeah, what I want to just think about is, if you could explain, is a lot of people don't realize what was the, where demons come from. What's the origin of that?
Right. Demons are actually fallen angels. They were the legion that followed Satan, who rejected, who wanted to be like God, and rejected the thought of God becoming man in Jesus, and so they fell. And so they were actually fallen angels, but they kept all of the traits of an angel. Mm-hmm. So they have more than we do, knowledge, power, strength, intuition, far greater than we do. But their whole thing is to, their whole mission is to destroy the image of God in us and drag us down with them.
They're doing a pretty good job of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's...
Oh, yeah. We've talked about that, and I think all you have to do is turn on the television or listen to the radio, and you can see clearly that things are much worse now than in the past. There's just so much darkness out there. It's unbelievable.
There really is, and I have to say that I do some spiritual counseling with the younger adults and things, and it's funny because they'll come in and, or even adults or whatever, the first thing they'll say is, well, I prayed and I didn't get what I was going to get, so I lost faith. Or it didn't happen, or this happened, and I would look at them and I'd say, okay, so something bad happened into your life. Why do you think God would punish you? There's another person on this earth that is evil and wants you to lose faith, so you need to really think about that. And they're like, they never thought of that. And I said, then this is what I'm supposed to tell you. They want you to lose faith in God, so then they can creep in and said, and then what are you going to do?
Right.
And like you said with the vampire, movies. It's funny because I had a case where a woman said that she didn't believe in anything. She didn't believe that there were angels. She didn't believe in God or anything like that. But she said to me, would I be more protected if I wore a cross? And I said the common thing in a vampire movie, you got to have faith for it to work.
Yeah.
And it is.
You know what was the best movie, although I like Dracula, was Salem's Lot.
Yes.
If you remember the scene with the priest, and he said, okay, take down the cross, just your faith against the masters. He goes, but I'm a priest. And he goes, you're a priest. And that thing just grabbed the cross. Yeah, I mean, if you're not relying on your faith, I thought that was such sound theology coming from a movie that they probably didn't even realize.
Yeah.
Exactly, and sometimes the movies do get it right when they...
Yeah. I mean, there were lots of people going around with crosses and trying to do deliverances and stuff like that don't have the commitment of a Christian life, and a prayer life, and it's not magic.
Right.
We're not dealing with magic. We're dealing with faith.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's what makes the cross powerful, is the faith behind and the blessing behind it.
Do you feel that things are, like I always say, the cases have start off with, oh, not so bad.
Yeah.
But I feel that they are just heightening.
Yeah. I felt that for a good 10 years. And I think there are several reasons. One, I think we're living in a heightened time of good versus evil out there. And I think that Satan knows his time is short, and he's prowling even more. That's one. The other thing is, I think there's so much negativity in the air. We've opened doorways. When we push God out of our lives, we opened up. Now you have people who are playing around with the Ouija board, who are playing around with seances.
Yeah.
You have people who are dabbling with stuff that don't know how, and so now doors are being opened and more things are coming through. You have people doing awful things. I mean, look at Kenya, look at Syria, the barbaric things. That's demonic. No rational, I don't care what religion, no matter what rational human being, that's pure evil.
Exactly.
Pure evil. And so there's just so much of that out there, and plus the fact people do not have that faith basis, that I think it's running rampant.
Right.
More rampant.
Because you would think they would want to, get more faith and have something, to believe in and things like that. But I'm telling you, the way that the news and everything like that, it's like
Right.
I can't even watch it anymore because
it's bad news
it's,
all the time.
yeah, it's bad news, but it also like lowers your vibration, and
yeah. Oh,
you know,
yeah.
you don't want to see anything like
No.
that.
No. And I think too that some people, you know, we encounter they make lifestyle changes and commitments. I said, you know, you got to be committed to whatever faith you were brought into, whatever faith tradition. You need to go back to it. And but I think that they're looking for easy fixes without the commitment.
Right.
And it's like when you have a debilitating disease such as cancer, such as diabetes, as I have it, there are things now that you have to watch in your life for the rest of your life. When you've been touched by evil now, you've got to do the prescription, what I call the spiritual prescription. And some don't want to do that. And we've encountered that.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I can't come over anymore because I'm not going to do it because you're not listening.
Yeah, they're looking for a quick fix. It's
Yeah.
just not there.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and
Or
do-
they don't have the faith enough. Like, what if it comes back? Just stop saying that.
Right.
Yeah.
Stop saying that. It's the law of attraction.
Yeah, you're already
If
inviting
you're-
it back by saying
if you
that.
keep saying, "Wonder if it's going to come back. Wonder if it's going to come," that fear is
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like when an animal smells fear in a
Yes.
human.
Yeah, right.
It's the same basic
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
you know.
And we've seen that a few times. I mean, we've had some people that were really completely devout, and you know, they did very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, then you have some others that I think we dealt with one, and he believed he was cursed. That was a tough one.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know.
But that
how many
ended up
times we
being
went there.
I think, being a psychological issue
Yeah,
too.
yeah. But and we found that go hand in hand too.
Yeah.
You know, the psychological and the demonic.
spiritual.
I like the
You know,
hide in there.
and I
Sometimes
think
they do.
people have to realize that too, because it's going to feed on the negative, the sad,
Right.
the anger, the depression.
Yeah.
That's a lot of mental illness too.
Right.
And they see that opening, and then there's your target, and it's tough. I mean, it's tough to discern: is it just mental illness? Is it this? Is it both? And how to deal with it. And a lot of times, he's made sure that you know, the mental health aspect has been dealt with too. You know, you have to.
That's the thing. We, because we're Catholic Christians, we believe in a more of a holistic thing. It's not just, you know, deliverance, yes, but there's also, you have to, if there's a psychological component, you've got to get that done as well. So they both go hand in.
Yes.
You can't just say, well, okay, the deliverance is going to do away with my psychosis. It doesn't. God created the medical field. God created, He gave knowledge and psychology to help us. That's a healing too.
Right.
So if one of those is off balance and one of them doesn't get, then you're not going to be totally, whole. And so that's why I always make sure. And we've come into things where, you need to go, whether it be family counseling or counseling yourself, and they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not going to do it. We've had one case in New Hampshire
Oh,
where it was a psychological as well as a spiritual, and she did get the psychological help along with the spiritual. Completely different person.
Yeah. We'll have to go into that on one where we
Yeah.
talk about a show,
Yeah.
but that one was incredible. It was an incredible
I
case.
never felt so good, like we really helped somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one for the books, that's for sure. It was really, you do so many and you see so much negativity that when you finally get something and you see a benefit, the
Right.
positive side of it, it's incredible, because it doesn't happen as much as you'd like, You try every time and
Right.
Isn't it
it
frustrating
just doesn't
sometimes?
happen.
Very.
You don't, you could go in
Very.
and it's not always going to be just that one time. Sometimes it could be 2, 3, 5, 6.
Right.
You don't know. You
Yeah.
know? And it can get frustrating, especially when you're giving them the tools, and either their belief is that whatever is bothering them is stronger than the power of the Lord, and it's just not so. But they're just they're in that mindset that no matter what is done, even though they want the help and they
Right.
want it gone,
Right.
they're still holding on to it. And at that point, there's not much you can do until they get that faith.
Bingo.
And they make a stand.
Well, how many times, I don't know if it's happened with you guys, someone will call, things are so bad. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, give us a call back, or they don't follow through.
Yeah.
or they
Yeah.
ask for the
Yes.
help and then they don't follow through. And that always makes my head scratch.
We always give them prayers and things to do first before we go in there.
Right, but sometimes they don't even
They don't even do that.
Yeah.
they don't
exactly.
follow through. They'll say, I have this guy. Okay, so we call them and say, we'd like to set up a time. Then you don't hear from them. And, again, those are the
See,
frustrating.
I can understand that more so than some of them, because if they really are dealing with something demonic, I can see them maybe not getting back to us because something's inhibiting it.
Right.
True.
Yes.
True.
When you're sending out, and if they have family around them, and you'll get that. Every email is an emergency. Like they need you yesterday or last week, which I can understand because they're panicked. Like you said, you send them out the prayers. Take the step, do the prayers, even if it's a family member doing it with you,
Right.
to try and get this going and see if there's a change. Get back to us in a week. Let us know how the prayers worked. And you're right. A lot of times they won't do it. And I can understand some of it with the demonic, that they might not be able to because it's stopping them. But if
Right.
you've got other people that are willing to help out, there's not a lot of reason for it. There should be something done. And sometimes it just, like you said, you don't hear back from them. And that can be frustrating too, because we've had emails, as I'm sure you have, where you're like, there's something about this one. I really believe that, there's something to this.
Right.
And then when you don't hear, or you try and get back, no, everything's all set. You wonder, like, all right, was it really something, or is something still going on?
Yeah, no, we did the same thing. I had an email, and this woman was, adamant that she was having all of these issues. And I said, okay, she emailed me. I said, call me and let's discuss it. But the email was like pages of all these things that have been happening.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Yeah,
when I
they'll write a
said,
book.
because I always want to talk to them and see how they are when we're talking, but she didn't return the call or anything. So, and then you start to think, oh my gosh, is anything really bad? So I would, email back, but maybe it's just they're not ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of different factors. It's funny, we had to change things too, because as you said, you'll get an email and it's 10 pages long. And then you'll call them, or I would, because I usually take care of the emails with Terry Wood, and we'd touch base with him. So everything's already been relayed, so he knows exactly what's going on. And we'd have to tell him, look, when we get in, this is what's going to happen. You can't have a bunch of people there. We can't get into going over everything that happens step by step, because we have 5 hours before we even get to it, you know? So we kind of change things around in order to, like, once we're here, it's time to go to work. Maybe we can socialize a little after.
Yeah.
But I think because they've dealt with it for so long, like it's just a venting thing. They need to, it makes them feel better to get it out, even though they've said it to me and to you and to him, but they're going to say it again. And, that's tough too. But, yeah, I can understand it, but it's tough.
It is.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions? I know you had some questions that you wanted to ask.
The egocentric nature of the demon amazes me. I was doing a phone deliverance with a person, and the demon had said, I've been with you 3 years. This is how you're treating me. This is how you're treating me. Wow. It amazes me. That they think they're wanted there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
we,
They think they're doing you a favor.
Yeah, and and although like I handle demons, but there are some lower type demons that aren't as more trouble than they are powerful. Those are usually the more frustrating ones, because they try to follow them.
Yes.
But yeah, they just act almost like adolescent.
Yes, exactly.
Adolescent.
That's what I would say.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and you would wonder because, they have such a high intellect, but they are ego. That was Satan's pride.
That was the fall.
It was the pride.
Yes.
Now,
And
what would you say to somebody, say they're experiencing things and stuff like that? Like, what would be the first thing that you would tell them to do,
Well, what we do, first we ask them to fill out, just to explain whatever. And I don't like to listen all on phone because I won't remember.
Right.
It's just so it's better if I have it in paper that I can look on it and pray on it.
Exactly.
And then what we do first, depending on what it is we'll send out some prayers for them for deliverance. If they're Catholic, we ask them to get holy water. if they're not going to church, get your behind back in church, go to Holy Communion, go to Mass,
Yes.
Right.
and go to confession. You know, if they're Protestant, get back to your church, make a confession of faith, whatever's in your tradition. You need to reconnect. In the meantime, you know, we'll send us all the information, and then we also send prayers.
Yeah.
Right.
We also send prayers for them. And I've created different ones for different situations over the years. And then it has the prayer service that they can do, and then the prescription, what I call the prescription, that they have to do
right.
after.
Yep.
You know.
He's always updating it.
Yeah, you know, constantly.
Revision.
Well, because you know what, I find these things like, oh wow, I should do this, you know, and then I end up. In fact, we have a website, but and it's not interactive because I just cannot
Right,
do
you have too
interactive.
much.
It's bad enough I have a Facebook.
Yeah.
But what I ended up doing now is I'm going to actually give it a little bit of an overhaul, because I want to, because of the fact that I can't go out. Very rarely can I go out unless it's local, and you know, and that we want to be a team that educates, and I need to hit that more home with people. Give them the resources
Right.
on what to do.
Yes.
You know, and you know.
That's what's important, is
Yeah.
to educate
Empower,
people.
because people, by their baptismal dignity, have a power, you know, have the Holy Spirit. They have authority as baptized Christians, you know, over Eve. They just know how to do that. You know,
Right.
that's different. Again, you know, like some ritual prayers only a priest can do, but there's an awful lot that lay people can do.
Right.
And in the Catholic faith, we have such a treasure trove. Saints,
much.
prayers, sacramental. I mean, we've got so much that, you know, sort of after the 60s got off in the... But now
Yes.
it's come back again. You know, thank God it's come
Speaking
back
of that,
into use.
I was thinking, can you go over some like the symbolism that really affects a demon, like the holy water?
Right. What holy water is, first of all, it reminds us of our baptism.
Yes. Okay.
But when we do the ritual of blessing water, it's creature water, I exercise your name of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There's a prayer. First of all, what we do is we make that water pure. Okay?
I'm gonna have to stop you there because we're
Okay.
running out of time.
Okay.
I want to thank you guys for being here. If anyone has any questions or anything that they want to contact my guests today, you can reach me at paranormalencounterstv9@gmail.com. And thank you all for being here. And
Thank you.
we're going to
My
have you
pleasure.
right back. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.